for whatever reason, they decided, nope, he's not a threat. So, and then a couple of months later, it happened what everybody had seen on Friday, this terrible attack in Magdeburg. So that must not happen. That is, actually, I try to be very careful with my words, but that's state failure. 5 people are dead. You mentioned the fate of this 9-year-old boy. Dozens are injured. Probably hundreds are traumatized. And as I said, the authorities, they had him on their radar. It's really hard to understand why nothing happened.
Now let's kick off with our top story. And German authorities are facing questions about what they knew about the suspect accused of driving into the Christmas market in Magdeburg, killing 5 people. Now, the youngest victim has been named as 9-year-old André Gleisner, and 4 women between the ages of 45 and 75 also died, and 200 people were injured. Last night, a memorial service for the victims was held at Magdeburg Cathedral. And there has been an interesting development because German police have confirmed that they had been warned about the suspect after Saudi Arabia claimed to have repeatedly alerted the German government about his extremist views. Talib al-Abdul Mohsen, a 50-year-old doctor who arrived in Germany in 2006 from Saudi Arabia, is currently in custody. Well, let's now speak with Tim Ruin, who is an investigative reporter for the German newspaper Die Welt. Tim, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hi there.
Now, you've got a really interesting exclusive on this, revealing that the suspect was actually checked out by German security services very recently. Tell us what you've discovered.
Yeah, we're working on this story with a whole team since Friday night. And yeah, actually, at first we thought, well, they just missed the warnings. Let's say, how professional was that? But then yesterday, we found out that it's even worse. They had him on their radar. So the Federal Criminal Police Office was looking into him a few months ago. And there were also talks of this authority with other regional authorities. And they considered to approach him, to talk to him. But then, for whatever reason, they decided, nope, he's not a threat. So, and then a couple of months later, it happened what everybody had seen on Friday, this terrible attack in Magdeburg. So that must not happen. That is, actually, I try to be very careful with my words, but that's state failure. 5 people are dead. You mentioned the fate of this 9-year-old boy. Dozens are injured. Probably hundreds are traumatized. And as I said, the authorities, they had him on their radar. It's really hard to understand why nothing happened. When I guess we're going to talk about his statements on social media and all this, I mean, he talked in plain sight. It was clear that something could happen. Yeah.
So, Tim, a lot to unpack there. I mean, you've said that he was very much on their radar, but they decided that he wasn't a threat. Who reported him as having? Who were the authorities? Was it from the Saudi Arabians that they got these warnings? Where did these warnings come from?
There are different things. I mean, you have to keep in mind that this was not an unknown guy who, I mean, that's often the case. He was radicalized in the underground. That was the case, for example, a couple of months ago on the terror attack in Solingen in Germany. But in this case, this person, I mean, he underwent his radicalization in plain sight. He had gained in Germany and also internationally some recognition as a critic of Islam, an opponent of the regime in Saudi Arabia, giving interviews to major media, also to the BBC, for example. He had 45,000 followers on Twitter. And between all those statements, there were publicly repeated messages saying that Germany would pay a high price because he and other Arabs had been betrayed. He talked about maybe dying, about revenge, about, as I said, a huge price. And so we didn't know it, but it was shocking to see what this person had publicly said before the attack. And several people from Saudi Arabia, also from Germany, alerted the authorities before it happened, citing those tweets. So that's a matter of fact. So yeah, all this happened in plain sight, and that makes this case so special.
And did any of the German authorities actually go and speak to him or interview him, or did they just
No.
leave him alone?
No, they left him alone. They considered approaching him, but they didn't do it in the end. And that's really hard to understand. And many questions are raised right now, and we need clarification from the authorities, from the government, why they considered to approach him but didn't do it when he was in the same time telling the public that he's going to take revenge, that he's maybe dying. I mean, yeah, it's hard to understand 2 days after this attack happened.
So basically, you're saying that it was clear from his social media that there were some very big red flags there. People had expressed concern to the authorities, and the authorities decided to do nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, at first, as I said, we thought like, well, they haven't seen him, but as they even saw what he's doing. They even had him on their radar, and they didn't act. That's a huge failure, as I said.
And I'm just trying to think as to sort of maybe reasons why they didn't do anything. I mean, look, one of the things that is, I think, confusing about this case is that you have somebody who is from Saudi Arabia that many people originally jumped to a conclusion that he was pro-Islam, that he was an Islamist. It turns out that he's not, or certainly from his social media. Do you think that maybe confused them in some way?
Definitely. I mean, that's a case that is not normal. I mean, we are trying since Friday night to answer the question, what is the potential motivation? What was his motivation? And I guess that's the most difficult question so far. We can talk about the failures of the authorities, the security authorities, but to answer the question, what was behind all this, is very difficult. I mean, as I said, he was portrayed as a strong critic of Islam and an opponent of the regime in Saudi Arabia. Later on, he started accusing the federal government of not protecting him and other Arabs, secular Arabs. That's why he announced a range. Then he also supported positions of the right-wing German party AfD. He praised the AfD frontwoman Alice Weidel. Some people are now, because of that, saying that in reality this was a right-wing extremist act, like Christchurch, for example. Others even say it was a false flag operation. In reality, he was an Islamist. But alleged evidence for this is very weak. So one must also not rule out the possibility that the man was mentally ill. So I mean, I don't know. As journalists, we have to be very careful here.
Yes.
We can state facts that we have, and in the same time, we have to clearly separate those facts from speculation. So I understand that everyone, I mean, I see it every day in the office. People want answers, our readers want answers, but when it comes to its motivation, it's really tricky.
Yeah, and you know, you've made a really important. You struck an important note of caution there. That, you know, and I know everybody understandably wants to get answers. I mean, until we really hear from this man himself through the authorities, as you say, it's a very mixed picture. But look, as you say, there's a lot of anger, and presumably the German government is facing a lot of anger from the public. And now that your story is out there, this story about the authorities not investigating him, what do you think this means for the government now?
I mean, it's bad news for the government, and you have to take into account that there are going to be elections in 2 months. So that's really not a good story. I mean, the whole thing is terrible, but the fact that they knew about this person and he was on their radar, that's really bad news. for the government and for the authorities. And there are still other questions. We found out that the Federal Office for Migration also received some alerts about this person, and the only thing they tell us is we took it serious. But when asking them, so which measures were taken? Did you inform? Did you forward those messages to the police as well? They don't want to answer those questions. So there's a lot to investigate. There could be a lot of, you said it right now, a lot of anger in the public because the actions of this person were not handled in an appropriate manner, even months or a year before this attack happened.
I mean, there's a lot, as you say, that could come out, more that
Yeah.
could come out on this, which looks incredibly bad for the institutions and the state and the ruling party. And just final question to you, Tim, how has the far right attempted to weaponise that? I know there was a big gathering in the town last night. What is the mood from that side of the political spectrum?
I mean, at the very beginning, it seemed to be quite clear. An Arab man attacked the German Christmas market, so they blamed the government. They blamed the government for what has happened. And now they are a bit more quiet, I'd say, because it's so difficult to really know what was behind it. It's also like like left-wing people. They are calling it now an act of a right-wing extremist. You see both sides saying a lot of things which aren't really based on facts at this moment. I have to say it for both sides. Actually.
Yes, I think probably it's one of these things where, whether you're a journalist or a person with any sort of platform, just have to take your time before rushing to any sort of conclusions about this. But, whatever comes out of it, this is an absolutely heinous act and a great tragedy and an act of real evil. Tim, so interesting speaking with you. Really interesting conversation. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks a lot for the invitation.
That's Tim Ruin, who is an investigative reporter for the German newspaper Die Welt. And, just listening to that conversation with Tim, I mean, it is going to be pretty explosive when all of the details come out in terms of who knew what when about this person. This is going to be, this continued going to be a very, very, very big story.